My brother didn't raise his voice when he said it. He didn't need to. "Apologize to Madison," Evan said, leaning back in the leather chair that used to be mine. "Or you're done here." The words landed soft, polite, almost bored. The boardroom lights hummed overhead, glass walls. Night pressed flat against the windows. Somewhere down the hall, the cleaning crew was running the dishwasher, a steady mechanical churn, like nothing important was happening at all. My parents sat on either side of him, my mother's hands folded tight in her lap, my father staring at the marble table like it had personally disappointed him. No one looked at me. I looked at my brother. My little brother, 30 years old, CEO by inheritance, not merit, wearing the watch our father gave him when he handed over the title, the one I'd earned and never received. "Apologize," Evan repeated. "You embarrassed her." Madison didn't speak. She didn't have to. She stood by the screen, arms crossed, lips pressed into something between a smile and a threat, the kind of expression women learn when they're protected by men with power. I waited, long enough for the hum of the lights to feel loud. Then I said it. Fine. Not angry, not shaking, just final. That was the moment something in Evan's eyes flickered. Not fear, not doubt, relief. He thought he'd won. If you've ever been cornered by your own family and told to swallow the truth to keep the peace, you already know how this feels. If you've ever been treated like the problem simply because you refuse to lie, take a second. Hit like, subscribe, because this didn't end the way they thought it would. The meeting didn't explode. No one slammed a fist. No one yelled. That's what made it worse. Evan nodded once, satisfied. Good. Send the apology tonight. Copy the investors. We'll smooth this over. My mother finally spoke soft as a lullaby. This is for the best, Lauren. You're the older one. You understand these things. Translation. Be the one who bends. My father cleared his throat. Madison was just enthusiastic. You didn't have to undermine her in front of everyone. Undermine. That word again. I stood up. The chair legs scraped against the floor, sharp and ugly. Everyone flinched except Madison. She tilted her head. I accept your apology, she said lightly. When you're ready. I didn't look at her. I picked up my notebook. Closed it. One click. Clean. Controlled. I'm ready, I said. Then I walked out while Evan was still explaining timelines to the air. The elevator ride down took less than a minute. It felt longer than the last 12 years. The doors opened onto the executive floor I had built from nothing. My heels echoed on polished concrete. Motion sensors snapped lights on as I passed, then off again behind me, like the building itself was erasing my steps. I unlocked my office. The same office I'd had since I was 26. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view of the ridgeline black against the night sky. I stood there for a second, breathing in the smell of paper coffee and lemon cleaner. Then I started packing. The awards came off the wall first. Heavy, cold, wrapped in bubble wrap like fragile evidence. Next, the framed permits, every project I'd shepherded through zoning hell, wildfire restrictions, seasonal bans. Each one earned. Each one forgotten the moment Evan got his title. The team photo came last. 34 people. Smiling, exhausted, proud. I turned it face down in the box. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. Nash, my operations lead. They just announced you're suspended without pay. What's happening, Sarah? Please tell me this is a rumor. Marcus sent a single message. A skull emoji. I typed one reply. Take care of yourselves. Then I silenced the phone and slid it into my pocket. By the time I finished, the office looked like I'd never existed. 4 boxes, 1 suitcase, 12 years reduced to cardboard and tape. I carried the last box to the elevator myself. No help. No audience. In the parking garage, I loaded everything into my car and sat there with the engine off. The concrete smelled damp. Somewhere above me, a door slammed. Laughter echoed. I felt lighter than I should have. At home, I poured a glass of red wine and didn't sit down. The boxes stayed stacked by the door unopened. I didn't need to see what was inside them. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, named it Records. 5 years' worth of silence stared back at me. I hadn't planned to use it, not like this, but I had planned to keep it. Every revised invoice, every material swap, premium cedar replaced with treated pine, supply issues, Madison called it. Funny how the savings always vanished. Every side agreement, contractors pressured to sign addendums no one else saw, kickbacks routed through an LLC registered to her cousin's condo in Phoenix. Every message, voice notes, texts, laughing about how no one ever checks the fine print. I dragged files in one by one, slow, methodical, like building a case, like preparing for a storm you can already hear. Then I opened my employment contract. Section 9 glowed on the screen. Suspension without documented cause triggered immediate severance, accelerated equity vesting, no appeals. I smiled for the first time that night. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. I let it ring, then a text. "Lauren, please don't do anything drastic. We're family." I stared at the word family until it blurred. Another message followed. "Madison is very upset. She feels attacked." That was the third thing in me that snapped. I typed back nothing, closed the messages, and began writing my resignation. It took 7 minutes. At the bottom, I added one sentence. Clear, surgical, effective immediately. I didn't hit send yet. Outside the city hummed. Cars, sirens, life continuing indifferent. Somewhere across town my brother was probably celebrating, pouring a drink, congratulating himself on handling me. My mother believed this would all blow over by morning, that I'd come back, that I always did. She'd said it once years ago after Evan took credit for a deal I closed. "Don't be dramatic, Lauren," she'd whispered in the kitchen, hand tight on my wrist. "This is just how families work." That night, standing alone in my apartment, the glow of the laptop lighting my hands, I finally understood something she never would. This wasn't how families worked. This was how they broke you and called it love. 3 days earlier, the lie had already been spoken. It happened on a video call I was added to, late, the kind of call that smells like trouble before you even unmute. I remember because my calendar alert chimed while I was reviewing permitting delays from the county. Red flags stacked on red flags. I almost declined. Then Nash texted, "They want you on. Investors asked for development." That alone told me something was wrong. The screen filled with faces I recognized instantly. Private equity guys from the East Coast, clean haircuts, neutral expressions, the kind of men who don't smile unless money is already secured. Behind them, floor-to-ceiling windows and skyline views that cost more than my first house. Madison was already talking. She stood too close to the camera blazer. Stiff shoulders back voice pitched half an octave higher than usual. Performance mode. I'd seen it before. So with our streamlined process, she said brightly, we're projecting full delivery of all 40 units within 10 months. 10. The number hit me like ice water. 10 months for 40 custom mountain homes on protected land with seasonal build restrictions, weather windows, and a county permitting office that still used fax machines. I didn't move, didn't blink, just listened. Madison kept going. Words like aggressive, innovative, unprecedented efficiency. She said turnkey 3 times. She said guaranteed once. I watched one of the investors lean back slightly. Not impressed, not alarmed, just curious. Then someone spoke. A man with silver hair and a voice trained to sound casual while cutting arteries. "Lauren," he said, reading my name off the screen. "You oversee development, correct?" "Yes." "Is 10 months realistic?" There it was, clean, direct, no theatrics. Madison's smile froze, just a fraction, enough for me to see it. I didn't look at her. "No," I said. 24 months would be optimistic. 28 is more realistic if we avoid weather delays and supply issues." Silence, not awkward silence, calculating silence. The investor nodded once. "Thank you for the clarification." The call ended 2 minutes later. Madison didn't say anything. She logged off without looking at me. I sat there for a second, staring at my own reflection in the dark screen. The overhead lights buzzed. Somewhere outside my office, someone laughed. Normal sounds, normal day. At 2:17 p.m., I sent the follow-up email. Subject line, revised timeline and cost overview, summit crest, phase 3 professional, neutral, boring. I attached the feasibility report, the permitting schedule, contractor bids, line item costs, every number defensible, every claim sourced. I copied Evan, the board, legal. By 4:03 p.m., Evan was in my doorway. He didn't knock. What the hell was that email he snapped holding up his phone like it was evidence of a crime? Madison followed him in. Of course she did. Heels clicking, arms crossed, occupying space she hadn't earned. I corrected a timeline, I said, before it became a legal problem. You made her look incompetent, Evan shot back. Madison scoffed. I had them ready to wire $30 million, Lauren. $30 million. I looked at her. Really looked. You had them ready to sue us, I said calmly. When we missed an impossible deadline. She stepped closer. You don't know that. I do, I replied. I've been doing this longer than you've been wearing heels to meetings. Evan slammed his hand on my desk. The sound cracked sharp through the room. Your job, he said, is to support leadership. I am, I said, by telling the truth. That's not what I mean. Of course it wasn't. Madison tilted her head, voice suddenly soft. You didn't have to humiliate me. I didn't, I said. I answered a question. She laughed, a short, breathy sound. You're jealous. There it was. The favorite word, the shield, the excuse. Evan straightened, chest puffed. Ever since Dad made me CEO, you've been difficult. I stared at him, at the title that had been handed to him like a birthday gift while I stood in the corner holding cake. I built this division, I said, from 4 people to 80, from 0 revenue to half the company's portfolio. And I appreciate that, Evan said quickly, too quickly. But you don't get to undermine my decisions. Your decision, I corrected, was to let your girlfriend promise something we can't deliver. Madison's eyes flashed. We'll figure it out. Translation. My team would bleed. She would collect commission. Evan leaned in. Send a second email. Say 10 months is aggressive but achievable. No. The word landed flat. Final. His jaw tightened. This isn't a negotiation. I know. Madison sighed dramatically. This is exactly why people don't like working with you. You always have to be right. I have to be honest, I said. Evan straightened. Apologize. Or I take this to the board as insubordination. I held his gaze. Didn't blink. Do what you have to do. That night I forwarded the entire thread to Nash with one sentence. Start documenting everything. I didn't know how soon I'd need it. Back in the boardroom days later when Evan told me to apologize or be fired, all of that was already done, already decided. They thought the threat was my breaking point. They didn't realize it was my exit cue. My mother's voice still rang in my ears as I packed that night. Why do you always have to make things harder than they need to be? Because someone has to tell the truth. Even if it costs $30 million, even if it costs a family. And standing there in my empty office boxes, stacked city lights flickering outside, I understood something with a clarity that hurt. The lie had never been Madison's alone. They had all chosen it. And I was done carrying the price. I didn't rush. That surprised me. I thought packing 12 years into boxes would feel frantic, desperate, like trying to outrun something. Instead, my hands moved slowly, deliberately, as if my body already knew there was no reason to hurry anymore. The office was quiet in a way it never had been before. No keyboards, no phones, no low murmur of my team arguing about schedules or budgets. Just the faint click of the HVAC system and the distant hum of traffic below. I closed the door behind me and locked it. The first box went under the desk. I started with the things no one ever noticed. The permits. Rolled, stamped, yellowed at the edges. Each one represented months of negotiations, public hearings, environmental reviews, compromises that kept projects alive. I slid them into the box carefully, like fragile bones. The second box was heavier. Awards, crystal plaques, framed letters from state boards, 3 consecutive years of Best Luxury Development Portfolio. My name was on all of them, small but unmistakable. I wrapped them in bubble wrap anyway. Not because they were fragile, because I was. The team photo came next. 38 people, some of them kids when they started. Some of them older than me, skeptical, exhausted, brilliant. They trusted me, trusted that when leadership wanted corners cut, I'd be the one standing in the doorway saying no. I hesitated. Then I turned the frame face down and slid it into the box. The third box stayed empty for a moment. I sat in my chair, the one Evan now liked to sit in during meetings, and let myself remember the day I moved into this office. 26 years old. No title worth mentioning. Just a mandate to make it work. I had, slowly, quietly, without applause. The buzz of my phone broke the moment. Nash again, then Sarah, then Marcus. The screen lit up with messages I didn't open. I already knew what they said. Suspended without pay. Pending apology. Effective immediately. I placed the phone face down on the desk. The mug went into the trash. World's okayest sister. A joke Evan thought was hilarious the year he became CEO. I'd smiled when he handed it to me. Laughed even. I didn't laugh now. The emergency binder stayed on the desk. 300 pages. Vendor contacts. Crisis plans. Shortcuts you only learn after disasters. Fires. Floods. Supply chain collapses. The binder had saved the company more than once. Someone else could figure it out. By the time the fourth box was full, the office looked like a hotel room after checkout. Neutral, impersonal, already forgetting me. I zipped the suitcase last. 12 years fit inside 4 boxes and 1 rolling case. I wheeled everything to the elevator myself. No one stopped me. Security nodded and looked away. In the parking garage, the air smelled like oil and damp concrete. I loaded the boxes into my car one by one, then leaned against the trunk and closed my eyes. I expected anger. What I felt instead was release. At home, I didn't unpack. I left the boxes stacked by the door like proof I hadn't imagined any of it. Poured a glass of wine. Didn't sit down. Just stood there barefoot on cold tiles staring at nothing. Then I opened my laptop. The folder had always been there. Buried, quiet, unnamed. Tonight I renamed it. Archive. Inside were years of things I told myself I was keeping just in case. Invoices with 2 versions. Approved materials replaced with cheaper substitutes after sign-off. Margin differences that never reconciled. Side agreements. PDFs saved under generic names. Contractors pressured to sign addendums late at night, promising rebates that never showed up on the books. Emails where Madison laughed about creative sourcing. Texts bragging about handbags bought with deal bonuses. Voice notes joking that no one ever checked humidity barriers until mold showed up. I dragged files into subfolders, materials swaps, kickbacks, timeline misrepresentation, legal exposure. The structure calmed me, like organizing a crime scene. By midnight, I was still standing. I opened my employment agreement next, the one I'd insisted on renegotiating when my father stepped back. Evan had laughed at the time, called me paranoid. Section 11. Suspension without documented cause constituted constructive termination. Severance 8 months salary. Equity immediate accelerated vesting. I read it twice, then a third time. Yesterday's suspension had just handed me everything they'd spent years denying me. I didn't celebrate. I drafted my resignation instead. 7 minutes. No emotion, no accusations. Effective immediately. I saved it. Didn't send it yet. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I let it ring until it stopped. Then a text appeared. Lauren, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder. Another followed. Madison is very upset. She feels attacked. I stared at the words until they lost meaning. The sink behind me clicked as the dishwasher turned on automatically. A soft mechanical hum filled the apartment. I remembered being 12 standing in the kitchen while Evan cried over a broken toy. You're older, my mother had said without looking at me. You should understand. At 16, when Evan failed a class and I brought home straight A's, that's expected from you, she'd said. Don't rub it in. At 27, when Evan was handed the CEO title at a birthday party, don't make a scene, she'd whispered, fingers digging into my arm. This makes your father happy. The dishwasher kept humming. I closed my messages without replying. Then I opened a new email. Subject line: full transparency. Summit Crest Phase 3. Recipients Board. Legal. Lenders. Investors. I attached the archive. Password protected. Impossible to ignore. I hovered over send. For a brief moment, I felt something close to grief. Not for the company. For the illusion that if I just worked hard enough, told the truth long enough, they'd eventually choose me. They never had. I clicked send. The sound was soft, a single digital whoosh, final. My phone lit up immediately. Calls, voicemails. I didn't listen. I forwarded one last email to my attorney. Clause triggered. Please prepare. Then another to a recruiter whose number I'd memorized months ago. Available immediately. I closed the laptop, finished the wine, slept without dreams. The next morning when I walked back into that building one final time wearing the charcoal suit I reserved for serious decisions, I already knew something they didn't. They thought I was walking away with boxes. I was walking away with leverage, and there was nothing left in that office or that family that I needed to carry with me ever again. By the time the sun came up, my phone was already vibrating itself off the nightstand. I didn't look at it. I showered first. Let the water run hotter than usual. Steam filled the bathroom, fogged the mirror, softened the edges of everything. I needed that small mercy before the day hardened again. I chose the charcoal suit, the one I wore when deals crossed 8 figures. Clean lines, no jewelry except a watch I hadn't worn in years. My father gave it to me the night Evan became CEO. I fastened it, stared at my wrist, then took the watch off and left it on the dresser. I didn't need reminders today. When I walked into the lobby, security recognized me and looked away. Not out of disrespect, out of instinct. Everyone already knew something was wrong. The elevator ride felt longer than it ever had. Each floor lit up, then passed. 12 years compressed into a vertical climb. When the doors opened on the executive floor, they were waiting. All of them. Evan stood closest to the boardroom doors, shoulders squared like he was bracing for impact. Madison beside him, eyes rimmed red but dry. My mother wringing her hands. My father a step back, gaze fixed on the carpet like it might open and swallow him whole. Maurice, the company lawyer, clutching a yellow legal pad like a life raft. Evan spoke first. "We need to talk before this goes any further." I didn't stop walking. Maurice hurried to keep pace. "Lauren, the email you sent last night, this is catastrophic. Investors are calling emergency meetings. The banks are aware," I said. Madison stepped in front of me. Bold. Reckless. "You're destroying everything because you couldn't admit you were wrong." I stopped. The hallway lights buzzed faintly overhead. Somewhere a printer whirred to life. Normal sounds. Wrong moment. I looked at her. Really looked. "No," I said. "I'm destroying the lie." Evan's voice cracked. "You didn't have to do this publicly." I turned to him. "You suspended me publicly." That was different. "It always is," I said. My mother reached for my arm. Her fingers brushed my sleeve, tentative pleading. "Honey, please, let's go inside. Sit down. We can fix this." I smiled. It wasn't kind. There is no we anymore. I stepped past them and opened the boardroom doors. Inside, the long table gleamed under the lights. Empty chairs, the screen at the far end still dark. A room designed for authority, suddenly stripped of it. I placed 2 envelopes on the table, one in front of Evan, one in front of Maurice. "My resignation," I said, "and my severance demand." Evan stared at the papers like they might bite. Maurice flipped through his copy page by page faster and faster, his face drained of color. "This can't be right," he murmured. "The equity, if this vests today?" "It already did," I said. "Yesterday's suspension triggered it. Check the timestamps." Silence. My father finally looked up. His voice was quiet. "Lauren, think about the family name." I met his eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. "You taught me to read contracts," I said. "You should have read this one." Madison laughed sharply. "So that's it. You walk away with almost $700,000 and burn the company down." "I walk away with what I'm owed," I said. "The company burns because you fed it gasoline." Maurice swallowed hard. "If you retract the email right now, we can forget the suspension ever happened. Full pay, backdated, whatever you want." I took one step closer, close enough to see the sweat at his hairline. "That email," I said softly, "is the only thing standing between this company and immediate federal charges. You want it gone? Call the investors yourself. Explain why their homes won't exist for 2 more years. Explain the material swaps. Explain the kickbacks." His mouth opened, closed. I turned back to Evan. "You wanted me to apologize," I said. "This is me refusing." My mother's voice broke. "You're breaking my heart." I paused, didn't turn around. "No," I said. "You broke mine a long time ago. I'm just done paying for it." I walked out. No one followed. The elevator doors closed on 5 stunned faces. I felt nothing. Less than 2 weeks later, the lawsuits hit. 38 of the 42 investors filed jointly in federal court. Fraud, breach of contract, deceptive trade practices, negligent misrepresentation. The complaint was thick, brutal, precise. My email was quoted verbatim, every attachment cataloged, every invoice cross-referenced, new exhibits added by banks once the construction loans slipped into default. The headlines came fast. Summit Crest retreats under federal investigation, luxury development promises, collapse under scrutiny. Nash lasted 9 days. On the 9th morning, he walked into Evan's office, placed his company laptop on the desk, and said, "I'm not going to prison for any of you." He signed my new employer's offer that afternoon. By the end of the week, 12 senior managers followed him. The ones who stayed didn't know how to finish 40 luxury homes without the people who built them. The board went into crisis mode. Emergency calls at dawn. PR firms on 6-figure retainers. Evan flew cross-country twice in 4 days, begging for private settlements. Security walked him out of the investor's building in silence. The night my parents called, it was raining. The old landline number lit up my phone, the one I hadn't answered in years. I let it ring. Then I picked up. My mother spoke first. Her voice shook so hard it cracked. "We're all here, please." My father cleared his throat. "We were wrong." Evan didn't wait. "The banks are calling every loan tomorrow. If we lose this, we lose everything. The company, the house, everything you built." I listened. Then I heard it. The soft, unmistakable sound of knees hitting hardwood. My mother sobbed openly. "We're on the floor, Lauren, please." Evan's voice broke. "Name your price. Consulting, 6 months, $1 million, 2, 5, whatever you want." I stood at the window of my new office, 30 floors above a different city, rain streaking the glass. I waited until the crying quieted. Then I said the only sentence they would ever hear from me again. Never again. I ended the call, blocked the numbers, set the phone face down. Outside, the city moved on. So did I. 18 months after I walked out, Summit Crest Retreats no longer belonged to the Whitfield family. The sale happened quietly. No press release, no farewell email. A private equity firm out of Atlanta bought the remains for 42 cents on the dollar of its last pre-lawsuit valuation. They kept the name, fired 2/3 of the remaining staff, converted the rest into glorified property managers overseeing whatever assets hadn't been seized, stalled, or buried under litigation. The brand survived. The family didn't. Evan was escorted out the same afternoon the deal closed. No severance, no goodbye lunch. Security handed him a single banker's box and walked him to the parking lot like he was a risk, not a founder's son. The official reason was gross mismanagement and loss of investor confidence. Everyone knew the real one. He had become radioactive. Madison lasted 6 days. On the 7th morning, she packed designer luggage into a Land Rover that was no longer registered in her name, left the keys on the kitchen island, and disappeared. 6 weeks later, someone forwarded me a photo she'd posted and quickly deleted Miami skyline champagne flute, a man twice her age with a nightclub smile. Her comments were turned off. My parents sold the house 3 months later, 8 bedrooms, 12,000 square feet, 40 years of curated success. The kind of place charity galas were planned in and family photos pretended things were normal. It sold for less than the mortgage. The Florida condo went next. Cash buyer, no inspection, pennies on the dollar. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental outside Hendersonville, beige siding, shared mailbox, the kind of place my mother used to wrinkle her nose at when driving past. They didn't call after that. I was already gone. Apex Mountain Residences announced my appointment as Executive Vice President of Development on a Tuesday morning. No drama, no backstory, just a headshot, a title, and a sentence about strategic leadership. The board stood when I presented my first quarterly numbers. Revenue up 47% year over year, on-time delivery restored. Investor confidence stabilized. 12 former Summit Crest employees now sat in senior roles, each one quietly competent, each one finished with loyalty being mistaken for obligation. Nash ran construction. Sarah oversaw permitting. Marcus took design. The first project I greenlit was a 48-home community on the ridge directly across the valley from what used to be Summit Crest's flagship development, the Ridge Collection. What remained of it. Framed skeletons, half-built shells, weathered lumber turning gray, a ghost town of promises no one could finish. At night when I drove back to Asheville, I could see both ridgelines at once. Ours lit, ordered, alive, theirs dark. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I felt finished. One afternoon, long after the lawsuits had settled and the headlines had moved on, my phone buzzed with a notification I hadn't seen in over a year. A group chat, 3 numbers. The title read, Family. Evan typed first. The words came slow, uneven, like he was measuring each one. We know you hate us. We deserve it. But please, just one dinner, 1 hour, no asking for anything. We just want to apologize properly. A voice note followed from my mother. 31 seconds. Raw. Uncontrolled. The sound of someone realizing too late that silence doesn't mean forgiveness. I chose wrong every time she said. I see it now. I lost you. I lost everything else because of it. If you never speak to me again, I understand. But please, let me say it to your face. My father sent a photo, the 3 of them on a plain couch in a rental living room. No art, no view. Evan holding a handwritten sign in thick black marker. We were wrong. Another message appeared. We'll meet anywhere. Neutral ground, 5 minutes, that's all we're asking. I read every word, twice. Then I pressed and held each number. Block contact. Yes, yes, yes. The screen went quiet. I set the phone on the marble island, poured a glass of water, and walked to the window. The city below glowed steady and indifferent. Traffic moved. Lights flickered on and off in apartments I'd never see. Lives continued without consulting the past. They finally understood the cost of choosing comfort over truth, of choosing the easy child over the capable one, of mistaking silence for weakness and loyalty for consent. I wasn't going to give them the relief of hearing my voice confirm it. Some apologies arrive after the door is already closed. Some doors stay closed, not out of spite, out of clarity. I had built a life without them, cleaner, quieter, more honest than anything they had ever offered. The chapter ended the day I walked out with 4 boxes and a suitcase. Today, I didn't reopen it. I turned the page and kept reading forward.